Late Night with BDD. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a special episode of Late Night with BDD. I'm your host, BDD, aka Brooklyn Dad. And folks, I say this is a special episode of Late Night with BDD because I usually do this thing solo by myself. But tonight we are on election eve, and I have with us today someone whose tweets you've probably seen on Twitter. But she is not just someone who tweets. She is Dr. Allison Gill, who is a veteran. She is also a whistleblower. She's a whistleblower from the Trump administration. She was actually covering the findings that we learned about in the Mueller probe, and that's where Mueller, she wrote, originated. And since then, she's been on multiple news shows. She's also a comedian by trade. She has several podcasts. She has Mueller, she wrote, plus The Daily Beans. And ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege and pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Allison Gill. Dr. Gill, thank you for being with us here. Can I call you Allison?
Yes, you can call me AG, you can call me Allison, whatever you want to call me. But the photo of me with the red hair with the bangs, it's been a minute.
Man, you have quite a few looks, and you rock them all well. I mean, very few people can pull off like 5 or 6 different looks. You do it. Well done.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So it's been a minute. As I said, I haven't seen you since the nerd prom.
That's right. All of the CIA operatives got that special invite to the White House, and we went and got some really amazing policy briefings from some of the White House staff, and got to share our time there that we spent with Ron Klain, who is the chief of staff. Absolutely incredible person. He knew who I was. I was either he really did really good homework, or like I'm just totally blown away by that. And also the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff. We got to have a little glass of wine out on the patio with those fellas. It was really, truly a very special weekend in DC. So I was very honored to be asked there, and it was great to spend some time with you and all of the other really incredible people putting in so much hard work for what's going to happen tomorrow.
Indeed. The full cast, that, like, when everywhere I looked, there was like somebody, like, oh my God, there's Jeff Tiedrick and there's Aaron Rupar. I was out of my mind. How did you react because this was your second time? Correct me if I'm wrong. Second time at the White House?
Yeah, I was initially invited to the celebration of the signing and the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act in September. And then I got another email saying, we would like you to come back and have some policy briefings. And so it was kind of shocking. And I didn't know who to tell because I didn't know who else had been invited. And I remember the people who introduced me to the White House team, the Midas Touch guys, because they asked the Midas Touch guys for my contact information and gave it to them. So I assumed they were going. I was like, guys, I think I got invited to the White House, but I feel like I'm being punked. Because I spent so long as just a mid-level government employee, and it's one of those, like, truly one of those I never thought it would happen to me stories where I was just doing a podcast in my spare time as a hobby to get the information out about the Mueller investigation as it happened week by week.
Can I stop you there? Can I stop you? Because I hear you down. People, we frequently do downplay our own achievements, but I won't let you do that. Not on this show. Not tonight. No, you. Um, that was a very big deal what you did, and it took a lot of guts, a lot of courage to do that. And I know that you did take the necessary steps to kind of cover your tracks and legitimately be um, uh, anonymous, so to speak, our anonymous contact within the administration. But still, it was that was freaking ballsy. That was really, really ballsy what you did. And you were like surprised that, Ron Klain knew who you were, but you shouldn't be surprised by that stuff anymore. It was very big what you did. And I only see bigger things for you in the future. What um what plans do you have for like the next 5 or 10 years?
Oh, well, I'm definitely going to keep reading the news. I've become attached to it, and it's not just something that like gives me purpose and brings me fulfillment. It also helps my anxiety. To be honest with you, as a veteran with PTSD, like for instance, I really like to watch the same movies and the same TV shows over and over again because new
Mm,
stuff has surprises, but the stuff I've seen a million times, it's very comfortable and I know what's happening.
mm,
And so that's what kind of happened with the Mueller investigation. I figured if I knew everything about it, it would kind of counteract any anxiety I had. And the fact that I tell people about what's happening also that's sort of one of the ways that I learn. That's like my learn language is if I teach other people what I
yeah.
know, I learn it better. So, but out of that came, like I said, and I'm not going to downplay, I'm going to do my best not to downplay what I did, but I was sitting in my kitchen just with a microphone, and it turned out that it was being listened to at the highest levels of government, including the Secretary of the VA and Trump's Office of General Counsel, and eventually I was investigated and removed from my job for what I was doing. But I've never spent 1 second regretting it. I will say I miss working, with and for veterans and active duty service members, ensuring that they get the health care that they need, timely access to quality care. I loved that job. That's why I got my PhD, was so that I could do that until I retired. And now, now what I do is I feel like I still provide a service. And so here I am, doing this. And it was quite a shock to get that call to come to the White House. What were your thoughts when you got that call?
I was very excited. Um, I was excited also because, like, I don't know if you ever seen that meme of Squidward from SpongeBob SquarePants looking out the window as SpongeBob and Patrick are running like yay. So I was Squidward. Like when you guys were at the White House, I was like, oh, sad trombone. No, not, there's- so yeah, I was very excited, and to see you there. Like you and I had already spoken on Zoom or whatever a few times, but it was still just a real thrill to be there with you and the rest of the group. I want to ask you that about that gathering of not just influencers, okay, but communicators. We are the people who've gotten kind of good at spreading the word. Let's call it spreading the word, right? And we all have our different unique ways of doing so. I had felt that something like that should have existed before, a month or two before the election. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I feel like they were kind of getting their messaging together in the months leading up. But I think um, it could have been done earlier. I think it would have been beneficial if it were done earlier. But I think now that it's done, I think it's going to be an incredible resource, provided that Twitter doesn't crash into a lamppost and roll over into a ditch in the next 2 days. Um,
That was a
I
great
mean,
tweet, by the way. Yeah.
it's weird over there. It's getting weird over there. Um, but I think it's important going forward. But yeah, we're more than just influencers. We're storytellers. When I told my story about what happened to me in the Navy and wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post about how overturning Roe could negatively impact active duty service members and military readiness. And then, 5 or 6 months later, the Pentagon actually put the policies that I recommended into effect. And me, I'm like, was that me? Was it? I don't know. And that's probably not me, but I think it might have been me. So we just kind of have to trying to understand that's something that I've been working on, is trying to understand the impact of my words and choosing them wisely,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense. And I think that everybody who was there, and you're right, it was so great. We're standing at the front gate, and then Texas Paul comes in, and I'm like, is that Ty
Yeah.
Ross? And then, I already knew Jordy. But like just to see everybody kind of file in and we recognize each other. Um, it was I feel like we already were all friends.
Do you think? Do you think we? Do you think we made a difference in these midterms?
Absolutely. Yes, 100% we did.
I mean, I'm asking you that question prior to any votes being counted, so it could turn out that, well, let's move on to the midterms then.
Well, yeah, let's just remember that in 2012, I think we lost 56 seats in the House. In
2010, was
yeah,
that
we
2010 or 2012?
2010, I know we lost 43. Trump did, so I mean, I have my own predictions. I think we're going to hold this Senate and the House. I think we're going to pick up 2 seats in the House and 3 seats in the Senate.
Wow.
Um, but like, even if we just half the number of losses, that's a win. I mean, it's not the win that we need. And I think right now the people are once again going to be surprised pleasantly as Democrats, because I think the polls are wrong, just like they were um, in 2020 and in 2018. We had a massive blue tsunami in 2018, and we're beating those numbers right now. So we just have to sort of wait and see, and beware of the red mirage. Beware of the same day Trump voters, which they did in 2018, which they did in 2020, and saying stop
Mhm.
counting, and all the mail-in ballots are going to come in. They can't even start counting a lot of these ballots, these early ballots, till election day closes, till the polls close, or the next day. So we're not going to know. We didn't know in 2018 until like the first week of December how massive the blue wave was that we created. So,
Now
but I
let's
do
let's
think
just let,
I
let's
do think
just slow down a little bit, because I heard you threw out the red mirage, and while I would like to assume that everybody knows what that is, I never like to assume. Um, for those of you who don't know, folks, the red mirage is, it looks like an actual red wave is happening, that because um, Democrats tend to overperform in the early votes. We get all of our early votes out, but Republicans tend to do a lot of their voting on the same day. So their votes, their same day votes, they come in like a wave, and suddenly it looks like they have won, not realizing that all of the votes still have yet to be counted. And in this midterm, and most midterms going forward, actually, we're not going to know who's won unless it's a, like, hands down decisive victory, like a 50-point margin or something. We're not going to know until probably the next day, and in many cases until the end of the week or longer.
Mhm.
So that's, am I right? Is that the pretty much the red mirage?
That's exactly it. And the Republicans use it as a tool to claim early victory. Just earlier today, Christina Bobb, at the beginning of a rally, I think that was the rally that Trump is holding as we speak. I'm waiting to see if he declares that he's running for president. But she said, we should know by midnight the day of the election. We shouldn't, anything that comes in after that is probably rigged, and that's how they roll. So they're already, they've done this since 2016. They've said if they lose, it's rigged.
Yeah.
And they prep for it. I think they were all shocked AF when they won in 2016, and we're like, well, I guess we don't have to claim it was rigged because we won, but they still did. So that is exactly what the red mirage is, and it freaked us all out on the presidential election in 2020. That night, we were all like, "Oh no, it's 2016 all over again! No, please no!" And then the numbers started coming in and coming in and coming in, and of
Yeah.
course, the Republicans are like, "Stop it!" And
Stop the count.
we're like, no, we're going to count all the votes. I know you hate it when more people vote because you lose when people vote. But
That's right.
that's what we should expect. And they didn't declare Joe Biden the president until November 7th. So it could take a while, and especially in huge states like California. I know we don't finish counting our ballots for weeks, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and so that night, I'm not sure if it was election night or the following. I feel like it was election night, late, like 1, 2, 3 in the morning. He comes out and makes a speech in front of like 5,000 flags, and he's talking about ballot dumps and things like that, and he tries to claim victory. Are you concerned that with so many election deniers as actual candidates in this midterm election, are you concerned that that's going to be a theme for election night, particularly?
Yeah, absolutely. And there'll be demands for recounts and people trying to stop and people filing lawsuits to stop. Mark Elias is going to be the busiest human person on the planet for the next few months. I mean, he got 8 victories today,
Oh,
protecting
wow.
the vote in multiple states. There were some people who never got their mail-in ballots in Cobb County, 1,000 people. And that he ensured through his filings that they had an extra week to turn their ballots in because they didn't get their mail-in ballots in time. They were in Wisconsin. They were trying to sequester military ballots because somebody went in and was able to request 3 military ballots and send them to some election lady and say, "See, it can happen." And then that person is actually probably going to be charged with voter fraud for doing that, which is rad. But that's just 2. There were 6 more. There was in Pennsylvania. I mean, he really is seriously doing incredible work with Democracy Docket and the Elias Law Group. And I imagine we're going to see lawsuit after lawsuit, just like we did in 2020. And they'll have to make their way through the courts, and it's going to taint the election. It's going to make people who aren't like following the news every 2 seconds think, oh, maybe our elections are weird. And that's the problem, and that's the goal.
Yeah. Are you worried about that thought process happening out there in abundance?
I am, and I'm also worried about how some of these state legislatures and secretaries of state and governors are going to handle all this. I don't think. I mean, they've passed so many voter suppression laws and they've put so many wrong people in charge of deciding how the elections are going to go. But a lot of Republicans are gonna win their races, and of course they're not going to contest those at all, even though they're on
No.
the same ballots. So, but I think we're in for quite a big legal battle. But I do have not as much faith in the courts as I used to, but I do have still faith in the courts.
Indeed. You mentioned secretaries of state, and I wish we could go back to the time when I didn't give a damn who was elected as seriously. Like, I've never ever cared about a secretary of state in an election. Never. I never had to. I didn't even know what a secretary of state did. I'm embarrassed to say, but I didn't know. And it was irrelevant. But now I know, like, it's one of the scariest things. Like, they can unilaterally overturn an election. And that is a major, I think, that is a major failing in our election process. Like, who came up with that shit? You know?
Yeah, the individual states, and they are able to run their elections the way that they want, and the best we can do at the federal level is to try to protect the constitutional rights that and provisions, sort of the way Roe v. Wade works, right? Like every state has its own thing, but there's a limit, kind of like the federal minimum wage. Every state sets their own, but there's a basement. And now that the Voting Rights Act has been gutted, that basement is lower for voter suppression than it has ever been. You know, states don't have to get the pre-clearance if they want to put forth racist laws or gerrymandered maps, because the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act and that provision in the Voting Rights Act. And we have now Moore v. Harper, which is going to be a very consequential Supreme Court case that would allow state legislatures to make the final decision about electors without having to answer to the people. I mean, they might have to answer to the people who would be very angry that this is what Trump tried to do in 2020, was to have electors thrown out and have the state legislatures certify their own, Trump electors. But that was against the law back then. But if Moore v. Harper happens, we end up with state legislatures legally being able to throw out the will of the people and put forth their own slate of electors. It's terrifying.
It is indeed. But I saw a bit of a glimmer of good news earlier tonight. And I know I've been like repeating like a mantra, like ignore the polls, ignore this, just vote. But I was watching Ari Melber, right? And he had some graphs and charts data that refers to something that you mentioned earlier tonight about the 2018. Okay. Comparing numbers of the early vote. So these are not polls, right? These are not opinion polls. These are just hard numbers. Okay. So in 2018 in Ohio, Democrats had 42% early votes to Republicans 44.7%. Fast forward to today and look at the shift fucking there. It is a Democrats now have a 5-point lead in early votes in red ass Ohio. Now, granted, Ohio is red, so that's an uphill climb to begin with. But I'm liking these numbers. I'm liking them. The early vote in Georgia, 2018, it was 44 for us and 49 for them. Today, it's 49 to 41. In Wisconsin, in 2018, it was 35% to 45. And now 37 to 34. So those are just a few numbers, a few reasons to be cheerful.
Yeah, and we had a blue tsunami in 2018.
Yeah, yeah. So what are you most confident about? Like which areas, which races do you think I don't have to sweat that result because that's pretty much the bag? Is there any races?
I'm sweating all the results. I think we have a really, really great chance to flip a seat in Pennsylvania with Fetterman. And I think Mark Kelly is probably going to beat Blake Masters in Arizona. But they're both very close races. But again, those are the polls. And something else we need to keep in mind that I'm not sure if Ari mentioned this. I saw that segment. But the flip between 2018 and 2022, something happened between those two elections, and it was COVID. And so we switched a lot to early voting and mail-in ballots, which heavily favor Democrats. And
Mhm.
so that could also be a factor in those numbers. There's just so many variables because the polls have been wrong constantly and consistently. We had a pandemic. We have switched largely to early and mail-in voting because of that. We now campaign differently. In 2020, we had to do everything remotely and digitally, and now we're back knocking doors and visiting houses. But we
Yeah.
didn't but we were doing that in 2018 as well. So there's just so many variables that I don't think anyone is feeling 100% sure. Now the Republican message is red wave. And that messaging is done on purpose so that if it's not, they can come back and say, you know, the election was rigged. It's the same reason that they show their rally numbers, and it's the same reason they lie about crowd size.
Mhm.
How can we have crowds like this and lose? Um, a lot of the polls, there's a lot of poll rigging that happens so that the polls show that the Republicans are favored so that they can point back at it if they lose and say, we were ahead in the polls. There's malfeasance. He wouldn't use the word malfeasance. There's weirdness. It's tremendous badness, whatever he would say. So that's all by design. And couple that with the red mirage, and you'll get a drunk Rudy Giuliani coming out and saying, we need to declare the winner. And of course, Roger Stone, declare the winner and let's get right to the violence. So, we'll see.
Here's Gail saying she read about a rumor where Republicans are telling people to wait to vote at the polls instead of voting early. I've heard that too myself.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was a big part of, Trump saying the mail, don't do the mail, it's rigged, it's fraudy, and I don't like it, and don't do the drop boxes, but sit outside and watch them for me, and intimidate voters. But yeah, they are by and large same day voters. Republicans are, and that's part of the red mirage. And if he's telling people to do that, that was one of the reasons he was saying mail-in ballots and early voting was a scourge because it's got fraud in it. And he does that to create the red mirage so he can say on election day, when it looks like the Republicans are up, that it's being stolen from them. It's all part of the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Sneaky bastards.
Mm.
Do you have any advice for our viewers here for how they can how we, excuse me, can maintain our sanity on election night? What should we do? Should we watch every excruciating second and minute of of the vote tallying, or should we do something else? Pretend like we're not really focused on this. What should we do?
It depends on what works best for you. For me, I have to watch every single detail because, like I said, the more I know, the less anxiety I feel. I'm also going to be hanging out with a great group of people like Mary Trump, and we're going to be doing a live, Bob Seska and that whole crowd, and we're going to be popping in and out live, talking with them. I think maybe Kathy Griffin might show up. I'm not sure. But hanging out with friends and knowing that we're there for each other. Twitter still stands, and we can be there for each other on that platform now, for this election. And I think the communities that we've all become this part of, through our storytelling and through our messaging. Or drink heavily, Mo says that's a good one. It depends on how you cope. Some people cope with promiscuity. If that's your deal, do that. Um, but honestly, it's however you best cope. I just want everybody to know that we are all here with you,
Yeah.
and we are not going anywhere.
I'm going to tell you honestly, I thought about doing a live tomorrow, but then I was afraid. I was afraid. My audience knows I'm a sap. I'm very emotional. Like the drop of a hat, I will start bawling for nothing. No, not for nothing, but and I cannot give video of me weeping to the trolls because then I'll become that next meme girl that I don't want. I can't do that. Let's talk about let's talk about the change to Twitter, and specifically before I go any further, right? This jackass Elon Musk, aka uh, um, What the hell was it? Something Clyde. Something
Oh,
Clyde.
yeah.
Yeah. To independent minded voters, shared power curbs the worst excesses of both parties. Therefore, I recommend voting for a Republican Congress, given that the presidency is Democratic. Why should everybody ignore what this fucker is saying?
Because he's only doing it one way. I didn't see any messages from him saying, since the Texas legislature is Republican, we need to vote for Beto for governor. I didn't see anything other than Congress, and Congress is going to make sure that he doesn't have to fucking pay taxes. A
Mm,
Republican
mm,
Congress would be good for his wallet. So that's Elon only cares about Elon. And you know, whatever. I don't listen to him. Don't listen to him because they don't curb each other anymore. This isn't 1982.
no.
Elon. This isn't where we are like respectful, having checks and balances on one another. The
Hmm.
the Republicans will try to burn everything down no matter what. They don't curb, no one can curb their excess whatever.
Right.
Mm-mm.
Indeed. Now you wrote a thread earlier. I'm going to read this out here. I can't believe I have to explain this, but here we are. The reasons that I can want to have the account impersonating me suspended while simultaneously disagreeing with the decision to suspend Kathy Griffin. So, a little background to those of you who were not on Twitter yesterday. There was an explosion of people, and I think did it start with Valerie Bertinelli? Was she the first one to do it?
Yeah, Valerie did it for like a day or two.
She
And
emerged unscathed from that.
and then she gave it up, and Kathy picked up the torch. And
Yeah,
what I mean by that is Valerie Bertinelli changed her, not her Twitter handle, not the at Wolfie's mom, but her
right.
name as it appears on Twitter, from Valerie Bertinelli to Elon Musk. So it looked like Elon Musk with a blue check next to it, but right below it says Wolfie's mom. And
Yeah,
and then Kathy did the same thing. It said, 2 million followers, not 200 million followers, 2 million followers. Kathy Griffin, but it says Elon Musk at the top.
her
And
whole profile page, it had Kathy here and it had Kathy in the bio and all of her information. The only thing was it said Elon Musk. And I guess despite the fact that he said comedy is now legal on Twitter, that motherfucker cannot take a joke because he suspended Kathy Griffin. And then for a while today, Free Kathy was trending. Did you start that?
I think so, but it's hard to know.
But so what's the status? Is she free yet? No.
No, no,
Is she
no.
permanently suspended?
She's been permanently banned, although Elon Musk has said if she pays her $8, she can come back. But I don't know.
No. He
No,
said that?
he did. Mhm.
What do you think about that $8 thing? Are you going to pay it?
I have a couple months to decide. Um, as people who are already verified, when Elon took over,
Yeah.
are grandfathered in for a couple months, and then I already had Twitter Blue, so I could edit tweets and have ad-free articles posted in my, because I would get, if you have Twitter Blue and you go to like the Washington Post, if you click on a Washington Post article, for example, that's in Twitter, first of all, there's no paywall, and second of all, there's no ads in the middle of it.
Mm.
And I thought that was worth the $4.99. I had already been verified. I wasn't paying for my verification. I never paid for
Right.
that. So now I just have to decide if I want to pay $3 more. And in a couple months, we'll know where this car is. We'll know where we'll know where the clown car is. Is it in a couple months? It might not be worth 9 cents.
I think it's the stupidest idea you could possibly come up with, to charge people $8 for verification. And I think that was what all the hijinks and shenanigans were about. With people changing their name to Elon, because for $8 you could be some knucklehead just has $8 and ill intentions. You
Mhm.
know, I personally, I do have Twitter Blue, and I use it for the bookmarks. I don't know if you're aware. Like, I have like about 12 different bookmarks that I have for different purposes, and I actively use those. They're very helpful to me. But like you, I want to see where, like, how is this thing going to work? It irritates me that he's charging $8 to boost people's messaging. What does that even look like?
Yeah,
Somebody's messaging gets boosted because on any given day, my my reach is shitty, and I'm only reaching a sliver of a fraction of my audience. Um, but let's see who else. When I have up here, I have this here. Oh yeah, legalized comedy.
mhm.
And then comedy is now legal on Twitter. And then the last progression in this is going forward, any Twitter handles engaging in impersonation without clearly specifying parody will be permanently suspended. And I know you were tussling this weekend with people impersonating you. Talk about that.
Yeah, this account actually very clever. If you look at the handle, it looks like my handle, but what they did was they put capital letter I's instead of lowercase L's in the Mueller she wrote at Mueller she wrote handle. Those are two capital letter I's. And it
Yeah.
looks, because of the font that Twitter uses, it looks like my handle. And I was very confused by it. I was like, how can this have my same handle? And I couldn't figure it out. And somebody finally pointed out to me, maybe they are uppercase I's. And as
Mm-hmm.
it turns out, they are. And this account is still there. I have reported it multiple times. They have received my reports. And this is just one of the accounts that's actually impersonating me. If you read that rest of that thread that you put up there that I wrote,
Yeah.
I was like, if you can't tell the difference between an account that says Elon Musk at the top and Kathy Griffin right underneath, then you're dumb and you don't
Mm-hmm.
understand what comedy is. Now, you might subjectively not find it funny, but that doesn't make it not comedy.
Right.
It's still parody and it's obvious. And what's different between my impersonator and what Kathy was doing is my impersonator is sneaky. They're trying
Yeah.
to hide what they're doing. They are pretending actually to be me and fooling people into thinking they're me. And by the way, following the one person that account is following is Elon Musk.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not laughing. I swear I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because I feel your pain. So my last name is Padellin, right? And it's
Mhm.
my at is Padellin, and I have those double L's. And I have been it's probably 3 to 5 impersonators per week forever. It's been for years. This has been going on, and more than like 60 to 70% of the time, Twitter says we looked at the situation and we found that that account is not in violation of our impersonation policy, and that's that. So Elon's thin skinned ass can't handle some very high profile Twitter accounts, basically clowning him. But the rest of us peons just have to deal with it. And that is annoying. Very
It
frustrating.
it is very annoying because not only is that account following Elon, which makes me think he just has a bunch of accounts following him that aren't real, but that account also pushes NFTs. So I feel like he's created a bot army of NFT salespeople. But the fact that one of them is Mueller, she wrote, I don't know. In comes the imposter syndrome again, right? Like Elon doesn't know about my tweets. He doesn't know who the hell I am. But I don't know. Maybe he does.
Maybe he does. But I saw some very funny ones here. This was Rich Sommer. He tweeted, "I'm in over my head. Can 44 billion of you send $1 each to Twitter? Attention me."
The attention me is the best part.
Then he says, "Okay, time to employ Plan B since they're making me keep Twitter. Does anyone know any advertisers who are like kind of into racism?" Not actual racists, just add people who are curious about what it's all about, racism. And then I saw you mentioned something earlier today about You said Elon Musk, did he actually post a Nazi on his page? For real?
Yeah, a photo of a Nazi soldier with messenger pigeons. Mhm.
And I left off the most important part. Rich Sommer obviously was suspended because comedy is not legal on Twitter, despite the fact that the meme lord Elon Musk wants people. I don't see why so many. He's got so many people. Just you know, bootlickers is the only word I can use to describe. He can do no wrong. You got all these people rushing to defend a freaking billionaire who doesn't know their names, who will never know their names, who won't take them to the prom,
A
and
lot
wouldn't
like Trump.
spin them if they were on fire. Yeah.
Trump was installed by Putin to destroy us, and I think Elon was installed by Saudi Arabia to destroy Twitter.
So, okay. So, someone else had talked to me about a new social media platform, right? Now, there's Counter Social, there's Tribel, and there's Mastodon. Those are the three main ones that I'm aware of. And someone else has talked to me about another one that is in development, and I can't tell you a name of it because it doesn't have a name yet. But I'm supposed to take a look at this and do a test drive on it. I saw your tweet earlier. You said you ain't going nowhere. What would it take for you to reverse that? How horrible would Twitter have to become? Because I mean, everybody's got their limit. What's yours?
I think we will know when a time comes. There may be a time, hopefully it doesn't happen, but there may be a time when the effectiveness is outweighed by the assholery. The effectiveness of your message when you are absolutely can't do any more good on the site. Um, and it's at that moment that if I can't possibly reach people, and the messages aren't getting out, and we've lost our community, I think it'll become apparent, and I think that's when we make an exit. But like I said, I'm driving this Tesla till the wheels fall off.
So I think I'm at that stage where you are, like, that you're describing, because every tweet I post, within the first minute, I've got about 10 vicious trolls commenting instead of my regulars, my followers, the people who are tuned in for my content. They're not. I got 10 shit posters who are like have me on notifications, so to speak. And it's a drag because after I tweet, I like to kind of go through the replies and engage with people, and but these people are just, you suck, I hate you, but they're still following you.
Yeah, and what I do every morning is I go do a list purge. I go find out what lists I'm on, and if the list is like stupid bastard asshole list, I block whoever created that list. Because they make it their job to put everyone they hate on a list and just troll them all day, every day. I had one guy who just kept posting the same thing over and over again to every single tweet. I eventually got him suspended because he included death threats. But that's that's what I would do. I would take yourself off those lists, block the people who created them, and then just keep blocking. And it goes in waves for me. I'll spend an hour just blocking, and then it'll be chill again, and I'll get my people back. And I also recommend putting out a tweet to find out how many people were forced to unfollow you. This happened to me. I lost about 2,000 followers this round. There was an earlier round when Elon first announced. I lost about 2,000 followers, and then I started getting messages from people saying, I was following you, and now I wasn't following you, so I refollowed you. And I got enough of those messages, dozens of those, that I put out a tweet saying, hey, if I unfollowed you or if you unfollowed me, it was unintentional, but it appears as though people are being removed from my feed without their permission or without having unfollowed me. So give it a check, and I'll refollow you as much as I can, because they put a limit on it. And I just want you to know it wasn't intentional. I didn't unfollow you intentionally. And I got 20, 30,000 likes on that. And apparently every single person who was ever forced unfollowed from my account followed me back within 2 days.
That's great.
And it made up all that ground plus a lot. So apparently
Yes.
it's been happening for a while. But that I would recommend trying that too. And anybody who's listening, make sure you're still following your favorites, and drop a note if hey, you were following me, you're not anymore. I'll follow you back, provided that I haven't reached my limit for the day, because they'll stop you from a certain ratio or something like that, or they think you're a bot if you're following too many people. But I did notice that, and there's just a lot of weird things. And in fact, that tweet that I put out, like, hey, drop your name below if I unfollowed you, that
Yeah.
conversation was muted for me, and I didn't mute it. So I wasn't getting any of those notifications.
Yeah, there's been a lot of screwy stuff going on with Twitter. And sometimes I ask myself, like, well, what's the big deal anyway? It's just social media, right? But it's different though, because Twitter actually does really kind of reach the people in a way that Facebook, for instance, doesn't. In
Sure.
Facebook, you can be scrolling down for for hours, and at the end of scrolling, you won't even know what you just looked at. You just liked a lot of pictures and your friends' vacations and their kids and shit like that. But Twitter is actually, when he calls it the Times Square, the town square. Yeah, that kind of is what it is. And
There have been
prior to his,
revolutions that have happened on Twitter. There, with the Arab Spring, and
yeah,
a lot of what's going on in Ukraine, we're kept apprised of. It's to me, a pro-democracy place. There's a lot of politicos and storytellers, and a lot of what I do, and the messages that we were allowed to get. The fact that I raised $500,000 for Democrats in 2020 and $250,000 for Democrats this election is because of Twitter. It's a very important site, I think if you look at it from, when Trump was elected and all the stuff started happening, we would say, like, me and Lincoln's Bible would be like, if you think about him being installed to destroy us, everything he does makes sense. To dismantle NATO and dismantle the West and dismantle democracy and fuck up our elections, it makes sense. If you
yeah.
think the same thing about Elon being installed to destroy Twitter, most of this money isn't his. It comes from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and China. And if you think about, and that's probably backed by, Deutsche Bank and Russia-funded
Of course.
subsidiaries, because Putin and MBS and MBZ are pals. But it's, if you think about it in terms of he's there to destroy it, everything he does makes more sense to me. They called me crazy for the Russia stuff. Prigozhin admitted
I
it
think
today, but and
I,
now that's what I think is happening here.
I think that's an uncannily observant observation. Observant, excuse me, astute observation. And I know that you have a hard out here. You've got some things that you got to do. So I want to thank you for agreeing to join me on the show here. And it was like literally last minute, and you just like, yeah, sure, let's do this. Folks, we can reach Dr. Allison Gill on several different Twitter handles. This first one is her own. This is, well, they're all her own, but this is her. This is at Allison Gill, 2 L's, Allison Gill, also 2 L's, at Allison Gill. The next one is at Mueller, she wrote, and those 2 L's are L's. They're not they're not uppercase I's. It's Mueller, she wrote. And last but not least, there's the at Daily Beans Pod. When can they catch your podcast?
Every weekday morning, and then I do a bonus weekly wrap up for patrons. So if you're interested in supporting us on Patreon, that's patreon.com/Mueller, she wrote.
Excellent. And last but not least, there's Mueller, she wrote MuellerSheWrote.com. So in case you forgot everything we just covered, go to MuellerSheWrote.com. Guarantee you'll be able to find a link for everything right there. Dr. Allison, thank you so much once again for joining me on what's this show? Late Night. Late Night with BDD. Hang on for just a second for me, and I'll catch up with you after I sign off of here.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you. And folks, thank you for joining me and Dr. Allison Gill on another episode of Late Night with BDD. I'm your host, BDD, aka Brooklyn Dad. And if you have not yet gotten your shot, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and get that shot. Wear your mask. Keep your social distance 6 feet or better. And enjoy the rest of your evening. If you have not yet cast your vote, I cannot stress to you enough how important this is. Literally, our democracy depends on you. What did you say? Was it unass your couch? I think it was Aries Wanderer, said unass your couch and go vote. Please do that. I love you all, and I'll see you here, same time, same place. Peace. Story time.